Greetings, it is I, Guy, again, and this time I'm coming to you from 2025, January 1st. I want to continue where I left off in the previous video, which is that, in the previous video I talked about how game critique is kind of cringe, and in this video I want to continue on that by talking about what is even proper criticism or critiquing or whatever you want to call it. So let's start with the first thing, and this is a very important point. People tend to project. They project all sorts of things, whatever, things they're obsessed with in their minds. If they find anything in anything, in any game, any movie, anything, they tend to project these themes, which are very important to them, onto the project and often find meaning or context where there isn't any, and they often inject their own meaning that the creator did not even, mean to put in there. So that's a very important thing. And the best example I have of that is Fallout. For quite some time, I've seen online that Fallout is supposed to be this criticism of capitalism or something, right? And I never viewed the games that way. I never even tried to view it from that perspective. And so to me, these talks about Fallout being a criticism of capitalism were like, okay, that's kind of cool. But I never considered them, as something actually valid. And people really were obsessed with Fallout being criticism of capitalism. I noticed they basically wanted it to be it, and it was like a very popular theory online that that's exactly what it was. And so what happened is one of the lead developers then comes out and says, no, Fallout was never about it was never about criticism of capitalism. And what happened after that is honestly hilarious. People flipped their shit, especially on Reddit. They ended up banning that developer from the Fallout subreddit or something like that. Basically, they were unwilling to face reality that their projected idea of the game is completely wrong, and everything that they made up in their own head up here is also not the case. And that's what I mean when I say that people tend to project. People just want to insert meaning in their own little fantasies into any creation, and so it is very, very easy to misinterpret something and start basically building your own universe, your own parallel dimension about what a game is about. And that's really, really bad, because intent and context matters, and above all else, the intent of the developer is what matters the most. You cannot take a project, say with confidence that this is what the game is about, when the developer says, no, it's not what the game is about. Or you cannot say that same thing while the developer, even prior to the release of the game, said that the game is about something else entirely. It's just not in good faith. When you do that, you're basically saying that whatever the developer has envisioned is irrelevant and only your interpretation of it matters, which I don't think is the right way to look at any creation, really, because take a look at Twin Peaks, for example, right? For a long time, there have been fucking thousands of theories about what the show is supposed to be about, how, what it all meant and stuff. And to this day, David Lynch never really outright said what it's about. You can watch a bunch of interviews of the things he talks about, which motivated him to make Twin Peaks, and then you can view the show through that lens, and suddenly it starts to make more sense. But even then, I wouldn't be surprised if the all the metaphors and stuff and whatnot, and the themes in the show is not what people arrived at as the definitive meaning of the show. And so when criticizing, a lot of people don't understand neither intent nor context when they make their criticisms, and they end up, first of all, criticizing the wrong things. How can you know what to criticize or how to criticize it if you don't even understand what the developer intended to do with that particular part of the game, right? It's very important to actually understand what you're going to criticize. And more often than not, what happens is people end up making these subjective criticisms that they try to pass off as the objective truth, or worse yet, as when somebody popular makes a criticism of work, right? And then a lot of people that hold that person in high regard end up just repeating the same things as if it was their own thought, and basically they're just lying to themselves and to others without even understanding what they're saying. And that's very dangerous, because if a game is misinterpreted and the like popular opinion of it is that like this is what's wrong with it, you can end up hurting the livelihood of the developer very, very much so, which is obviously a bad thing, because nobody wants to make a game, release it, be misunderstood, tell people no, the game is actually about this, and then the people double down, actually, Mr. Developer, you're wrong, we know what the game is about. And when you tell us, your customers, that the game is about this, it's actually not about that. That's very arrogant, and I've seen it happen a couple of times, and it's just really shitty, because it shows how arrogant gamers are, and it shows how oftentimes when they have no idea what they're talking about, they still want to pretend like they do. The second thing that can happen is, people don't understand what they criticize. So again, how can you criticize anything when you don't understand it? It's a fool's errand. And the third thing is not understanding that they're criticizing the wrong things. Sometimes when you misinterpret the intent the developer had with the game, you end up focusing on the wrong things, right? And you start criticizing those things, while in reality, the thing that should have been criticized, goes right over your head, and you're oblivious to it because you didn't understand the intent, the experience that the developer tried to give to you, or the thoughts that he tried to convey to you through the game. And that's also very important, because like, if you don't understand all these things, it's pointless to criticize a game. You're never going to arrive at the right conclusion. So then that begs the question, how the hell do you even properly criticize a game or any creation at all? Well, there are two ways. If you want to be subjective, you can just preface that, this is my opinion, blah, 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 and then to not be too opinionated about it. It's very easy to be opinionated, and it's fine to be opinionated when you understand that you're being subjective, and you know that what you're saying is just your interpretation of something. But it's very harmful to be opinionated and to try to pass it off as fact. The only way you can understand intent and context is to either find material of the game director talking about the reason for the game's existence and its themes, or to interview the game director directly. Now, the latter is obviously a lot more difficult. Not a whole lot of people are willing to, go through interviews, especially if you you don't have any online presence. But the gist of it is that the only person who you should trust on the topic of what a game is about is the game director himself. Obviously, there are exceptions to this. For example, if the game has gone through some kind of controversy and now the development like PR team is trying to do damage control, right? But if that's not the case, then really when a developer tells you what a game is about, you have to take it at face value. If you don't take it at face value, you are either again attaching your own, projecting your own ideas onto it and thinking that better, or that you don't trust the developer, or that maybe the developer's like lying to you or something. And in all of these cases, it's really harmful. There are cases where it's obvious that the developer is doing all those things, but in most cases, at least I can only speak for myself, when a developer tells you that this is how things are, that's how things are. There's no bullshit in it, and that's how things are. So ultimately, the only way you can properly criticize any creation really is to understand the context and the intent. You cannot criticize it, I believe, if your intent is to be as objective as possible, without understanding what you're criticizing. And these days everybody's a critic. Everybody has the right to their own opinion. There's nothing wrong with that. But to me personally, the line I draw between okay and arrogant idiot is when somebody tries to present their subjective understanding as an objective truth. That's the line for me. You might hear me rant about how Intravenous One was compared to Hotline Miami all the time in like a bad light. And you might think there's like some kind of beef or something. But no, that's not the case. the only reason why I talked about it so much is because it was very disheartening to see people look at the game not as its own thing, but try to compare it to another game they played, then play Intravenous, right? Play it like that other game, like Hotline Miami, and have a bad time because of it, and then blame it on me. Somehow it's my fault that they tried to play my game as another game. And I actually talked about one of the creators of Hotline Miami on this topic, and he sympathized with me and said that it must suck because when they released Hotline Miami, the first one, yeah, he told me that people compared it to Grand Theft Auto 2 all the time because that was the only top-down 2D game they played. And so I guess they were also upset about being compared to a game which, has nothing in common with what they made. And for people to criticize game B as if it was game A, even though the two games are made by completely different people. So yeah, I'm gonna end this video on that note. I hope you've had a good New Year celebration, and wish you all the best this year.